Okay,
All right.
perfect. We're live.
Good. All right. So I when I was reading about what I'm supposed to do as our discussion leader, it said that we each needed to at least talk for 8 to 9 minutes. I don't know if it has to be continual 8 to 9 minutes. I don't think so. But if we can share our thoughts about the week's reading and stuff, that would be good. I have 9 questions that we could go through, but I was thinking maybe we could start with just what kind of stood out to each of us. If you want to answer one of the questions, that's great. I was just thinking maybe if there was something specific that each of you wanted to talk about, and we can start with that, and then if we need more time, because we've got to make that kind of time frame, then we can ask one of the other questions that we've got. So does that sound okay, or do you want me to just go through questions and then we can answer the questions?
I think that sounds good.
I do too.
Yeah. Okay, does anybody want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Go for it, Allison.
Okay. So some of the things that, well, one of the things, I know we kind of talked about this a little bit in the discussion board part, but like what kind of stuck out to us, the insights and stuff that we have to do for our discussion board. But one of the things that is interesting to me with all of this is, maybe because I live in a bubble in my little valley. I live in a bubble. I guess I really didn't realize how far-reaching the doctrine is. The anti-doctrine, is that even a word?
Yeah.
Anti-marriage, or I mean, I live in Southern California. We had to do a whole lot for Prop 8, and that was a couple of years ago. But I think in my city, we're pretty conservative at least in my city. I know there's a lot of other cities around me that aren't quite as conservative. It was not comfortable to talk about traditional marriage, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world, because there were a lot of people that felt the same way I did. So my concern is that as my kids continue to go through school and things like that, the things that they're being taught there, I mean, I can teach them what I know, and I think that as a parent that's my responsibility, but I am really concerned about what is being taught to kids in general. Not just, I mean, I'm worried about my own kids, but I'm worried about, kids they're going to believe what their teachers tell them. And so if they're being taught those things in school, that anything goes and everything is fine, and that's my biggest concern. It's like the other kids that don't have the gospel, they're being taught whatever that teacher wants to tell them, and that's what they're going to believe. So that was my biggest.
A comment about that. I think that's a thought I had too while I was reading all of this, is how blanketed this anti-doctrine or how you called it is, and how it does feel like almost something you can't, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's hard to even battle it, especially with our children, because it's so pervasive. It's everywhere. I noticed in the reading, and I actually underlined it, because it had asked that question, what message are these things sending? So I kind of just circled a few things as I was reading to keep them off. And I noticed that in that while redefining the traditional American family instead of stunning and negative, that article, right at the very beginning, it says that the Supreme Court affirms the right of same-sex couples to marry And then it said, agreeing with the majority of Americans who support marriage equality, which I thought was just leading. Like, it's like all of a sudden, right at the beginning of this article, you're told almost everybody agrees with this. If you don't, you're kind of the odd man out. And then again, at the end of the article, it said, take a look at the lean-in images below that are repicturing an equal world, one stock photo at a time. And I felt like the message that is being sent constantly is that if you do not agree with this thought, you're not like everybody else. You're the odd one out. And this is the message that our kids are getting. This is the message. And I even know I have some teenagers that flew out of the house, including one in high school, one in elementary school, and I feel like our kids are like being taught at home that everybody is loved by God, everybody's a child of God, but they go to school or they go out in the world and they're being called bigots or hateful, and they don't know quite how to handle it. And as parents, I don't think we know quite how to handle it because we know we aren't bigoted. We deeply know that. But that's what we can be the part to be perceived as. But that to me is the hard part. It is hard. I don't know quite how to make that match, you know? Does that make sense?
So, going off of that, I think also it's really frustrating as members when you're like, a family is like a mom and a dad and children, and like we have knowledge of what a family should be, so like and they're like, no, you're wrong. And I think, like, no, this is what studies show, and they're like, nope, that's wrong. And they like constantly knock me down. It's exhausting trying to like kind of explain to them what we believe and why we believe it. And I think it's a one-way trust. Like, we respect their opinion. Like, we're not against things, like, don't like what they do, kind of thing. So we aren't like against them. We kind of respect them and their opinion, but they don't reciprocate that to us as well. So I think that's kind of frustrating as members. We always get knocked down and not really given a chance to kind of give what we believe and what we know is true. So.
Well, I think it's not just that. I think it's also that we have, we're not allowed to believe that. You know, we're told you can't, how could you possibly believe that?
Yeah.
And instead of saying, you know, you can believe what you want and I'll believe what I want, they want to change our opinion.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's hard.
It's exhausting. Yeah. At some point, you just gotta be like, okay, whatever. Like, you believe you, like, you do you, and I'll do me. Like, it'll be fine.
Well, and I think they want to do more than change our opinion. It's like we aren't allowed to feel this way, or we have a problem and we don't care about others. You know, that, and it is. I think you're right, Rachel. It's exhausting.
Yeah. I just have a couple of thoughts going off of what you guys were saying as well. But, my first thought with what you were saying, Allison, is it is so hard. So I am doing an internship right now, and with that, I've been kind of doing, you know, some research just about family trends and stuff. And I am seeing how important it is to start at like a younger age with teaching our children the doctrines of the gospel, because there is so much. Like, I was even so I was reading a few news articles this week for one of my assignments, and it was talking about how they have this new sex education program that they're doing in elementary schools, but it is so liberal, and they're even teaching it to like the little kids, and I was just so shocked. And just even things like they would have like story time, but the book was about like a transgender child, and they were trying to teach these elementary school kids that, you know, transgenderism is okay, and then if they, you know, mislabeled their classmate, they would get in trouble for it. And I was just like totally shell shocked. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. And so another thought that I had too, it's kind of what has been being said in this class, is that it's so hard. We can't. There's no way we're going to be able to like convert everyone or like fight all of everything that's going on. But I think it's so important that we focus on building up those people who are willing to listen. So, like our children, or if there's people we meet that, might be kind of interested in what we want to know and they really genuinely want to know. And obviously there are going to be times that we do have to share our beliefs with people who don't want to listen at all. And, something that I'm kind of learning is you have to give your testimony and what you know, and then just kind of leave it on the table and they can do what they want with it. As I was reading the articles and such this week and writing on the discussion board, I was thinking about my mission and how it's like when we have investigators, you go and you have this great thing and you're like, I know this is true, it's true, but sometimes they don't always accept it. And that is so hard to do, but sometimes you just have to leave it all out on the table and then allow them, that agency, to accept it or not. And you're not going to be held accountable for if they've chosen to use the information correctly or not, but you'll be held accountable for if you share it or not. So, yeah.
Something kind of going off of what you said with your internship and everything, I took English 301 last semester, and we had the opportunity to kind of choose our topic that we wanted to write about all semester. And so I chose gay families versus heterosexual families. And it was so interesting because I had to find 10 topics for them and everything. And there is not enough research for homosexual families. And yet people are backing it up, where there is so much research from so long ago for heterosexual families. And they were just saying we don't have enough research for homosexual families, but here's what we have. And it's crazy to see people be like, yeah, but this study says this. And you're like, yeah, but we have 10 studies for heterosexual families saying this. You only have one. So it's really frustrating.
I had that same thought when I was doing reading this week. I thought, because there's not a background for this.
Right.
What are we doing to those kids? I don't want to be. They should not be the science project.
Right.
These kids that are being raised by two moms or two dads. I know that there have been. It's way more prevalent now. This is not something new, but it's a lot more common now. Now that they are allowed to adopt and things like that, but it's like Russian roulette, and we're playing with these kids' lives.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a part of that science experiment. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch.
And they were saying that one reason that the homosexual families research is so low is because people aren't willing to come out and be that science experiment and everything. And research has only been going on since 2003, I think. The heterosexual has been around since the beginning of time. So it was super frustrating.
Stephanie, can you hear us? Have you gone off?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. I just can't see your video anymore, but we can hear you.
Yeah, so I don't know why it won't let me put on the video, because I guess I don't have a good internet connection. It actually, I don't know if you guys noticed that I left a couple times.
Yeah, I saw you jumped.
But yeah, I will try to figure that out for next time, because I don't know why.
No problem.
No, you're good. No worries.
Yeah. But as you guys were talking, I was thinking about something that I posted on Facebook a couple months ago about a family that was an acceptable family according to the world. And it was a family there was a married couple, a man and a wife, and the wife started feeling like she needed something more she needed more romance, or more, more in the sexual intimacy. And so she went looking for another woman, and then she brought her home and tried her out. And then the husband was like, yeah, I don't see why not. And so they started all sleeping together, and then they wanted to show their commitment to this new woman. And so they decided that they would get divorced so that one of them could get married to this woman. so that she would know that she was a part of the family now. And they had 3 children that were under the age of, I think, 15 or 12. And so, I mean, it wasn't just affecting them, it was affecting the whole family. And they did this documentary on them, and they just showed, images of these 3 parents with these 3 kids, and look how happy they look. And they even had the kids say, give their comments, and the kids were like, well, now we feel more loved. There's always at least one parent home with us that gives us the attention that we need. And they're saying that the parents were saying that they could go out on dates, just 2 of them, and then one would stay home with the kids or whatever. It was nice because they didn't have to pay for babysitting and all that. But anyways, they had a lot of different reasons why it worked. And maybe it looks like it works. Maybe it looks like it functions, but we know that the family's functions are not just to be with you and to love you. I mean, and just to accept you as you are. You need to progress and change. And anyways, so you could tell from that family that it wasn't a strong foundation, even with the parents. I mean, that they had to let someone else into their marriage in order to get what they needed from the marriage. Then that, I mean, it kind of looked like the 2 women actually, that they loved each other more, and the man was just kind of there for the pleasure. I don't know. But so it was just really sad. And then it was also really selfish. You could tell that they were just, I mean, the children were just going on with it because the parents were okay with it, but it's not like they really knew. But yeah, so I was just thinking about that, and how when I posted it, someone who's actually she's going inactive, but she is a member of our church, she was just talking about how it's okay. It doesn't matter what the family looks like now, as long as there's love and, some place for the kids to feel accepted. And I didn't think that was a good definition of family. As we are reading about, that's not a good definition of family. So yeah, that was my comment with what you guys were talking about. But what I really enjoyed from the reading is the part about the doctrinal framework. And so the difference between the gospel doctrine and the principles and the application. And I was just thinking about how I want to teach my children the difference, so that we can more talk about why we live the gospel, and why they would want to, why they're personally committed to serve the Lord and live the gospel, however He has stated that it should be, especially the family and marriage. And then that way they don't have to be as focused on how other people apply the gospel and kind of get, I don't know, offended or hurt that other people are living the gospel differently. But I think it'll just be good that it'll teach them to judge behavior as opposed to judging people.
Yeah. Going along with that super quick, I had to read a book, or we read a chapter of Elder Bednar's book, and it talked about that in one of my other classes. And one thing that stood out to me was he gave the example of like home teaching. Like, people know why, or they know how to home teach, but they don't really necessarily know why. And so that really struck me, like, oh yeah, we definitely know how to take the sacrament, but do we know why we take the sacrament, kind of thing? Mm-hmm. And so that is what stood out to me about that.
That's so true. I feel like as well, when, at least for me, when I understand the why behind like the gospel principles, it makes me want to live. I'm like, oh, that makes total and complete sense. I know that something, when I was doing the reading this week with Elder Christofferson's talk, and he was talking about how it's necessary to have both the father and the mother in the family. Well, in my brain, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, obviously, like, that's the way Heavenly Father made it. But as I began to read why that we need, a mother and a father to have a physical birth, but also a spiritual birth for Heavenly Father's children, it totally made sense to me. I was like, oh, that explains it. That's why Heavenly Father created families like this. That's why I know that it was, I think, last summer when the First Presidency issued that release about children of same-sex couples not being able to get baptized. I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense to me, because without the help from a mother and a father, they're not ready to take those, those spiritual steps. And so it would be kind of to their condemnation. And so it helped to strengthen my testimony. And like you were saying, Rachel, to realize, okay, this is why we're doing it. Like, it's not just there because, but it's there because there's a reason. It's helping us become like Heavenly Father. So.
Well, and I think too, along with that, with what you've all said, is that I loved in Elder Christofferson's talk when he talked about, or maybe it was in I don't remember now, but I think it was Elder Christofferson, where he talked about marriage is actually not man-made. It's ordained of God. And then in that video from Elder Bednar, because I teach the young women, and one of the things I've talked to them a lot about is the sociology of why marriage is so important. And imagine a world where men and women weren't married, what would happen to families. And as I watched that, I realized I don't know that I'm doing a good enough job of then connecting that to this. I mean, the sociology is great, but the doctrine is from God. This is ordained of God. It was created by Him, and it gives His children the best chance, best opportunity to come back to Him, or grow, perfected and grown. And I loved also how they pointed out that we're not against a lifestyle. We are for a God-given doctrine of the family. And I think, if I can switch in my mind, like, we're not against anything. We are for what God has given us. I don't know. That was kind of all over the place, but.
Well, that makes sense.
All right. Does anybody else want to share what their thoughts were for this week? Have you already? I know we kind of put kind of threw our 2 cents in it kind of as we went. Rachel, did you have something else specific that you wanted to talk about?
I'm good. Unless I need more time, then I can make something up.
Well, we still have, according to my calculations, we still have about 20 minutes. So we can go through some of these questions. What about you, Alicia? Did you have something else specific?
No.
Okay. Let me look at my question list and see if we didn't go through any of these things. One of the things I thought was interesting, and I couldn't really come up with a really good answer to this this was one of the questions they asked us in the beginning of the very first part of the week, was why do you think it's important that we study these things at the beginning of the semester as opposed to the end of the semester? I mean, obviously it's important that we study this stuff, but why, when we're talking about being an advocate for families, why do we talk about gay marriage at the very beginning? Anybody have a thought on that?
Well, I don't know. I guess I read it a little bit differently. When I read it, I read into it as, why are we learning the doctrine first rather than learning about the issues and then the doctrine? And when I was thinking about it, because I thought it was an interesting question too, I was like, oh, I don't know, I never thought of that. I was thinking about how important it is to first have the truth fixed in your minds, so that when you are reading or learning about these other things, you can recognize it for what it is. Like when I've been doing research for my internship and such, there are just so many opinions about everything, and some of them are things like, for example, like abortion. I've heard, okay, it's wrong, it's not good, but then there's all sorts of different stems and branches off of it that I've never even considered. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, okay, and I never thought of that, and then it kind of gets confusing and all muddled up. Whereas when I look at the doctrine first, and I say, okay, life is sacred, and each of us is a child of God who wanted to have a chance to come to earth. And then I look at the issues. I'm like, okay, well, I understand why that's wrong. And so for me, in my mind, I think it's easier to have the truth, to understand it, and have a testimony of it for yourself. And then when you go out and look at all these other opinions, it's easier to kind of discern the principle, I guess, behind those things and see how it fits into the gospel.
That's a way better way of looking at it than what I was thinking.
Thanks.
Actually, that was like, I think, spot on. I agree.
Thanks.
So that we have a standard that we then know how to measure things. I love that.
I was reminded of that quote that was in our reading, and I forget, who said it? I don't remember who said it, but it says, if we begin with the doctrine, then all the secular ideas about family become clearer. But if we begin with the philosophies, and then it will be like looking through binoculars backwards, where everything is farther away and harder to discern. And I was also thinking about how today a lot of people are deceived because of their feelings. I mean, they want to just go off of what they feel and not using their mind, or not, I don't know. I mean, like, we could easily think this is too harsh on the families of today because, you know, they might get hurt by this, even if it's true. But I don't know. I think that's kind of a way, if we study the doctrine first, then it's a way to get to be strong in that, and then just be firm yet gentle, because we're so, I don't know, we understand it better. We were able to articulate it.
Perfect. Really good.
I love that. That's so interesting.
I'm trying to go through the questions. We pretty much talked about, at least touched on most of the questions. The only thing we didn't really talk about is, why is the government interested? Why should they be? This is a touchy one for me, because we worked really hard to pass the marriages between a man and a woman, and then we were like pretty much told, well, you guys, I don't care what the majority thinks, we've decided that that's unconstitutional. So we were a little bit bugged over here in California when they overturned our what we had voted for, the majority of our state, which totally shocked me, because a lot of California is so liberal. But the majority of our state did vote to keep marriage between a man and a woman.
Well, and Allison, really quick, just interject.
Yeah.
Think it's interesting now that the rhetoric has changed. I mean, they're fully saying now that this is the majority opinion, and in reality, that wasn't the case. It wasn't.
I wouldn't be surprised if more people are, like, if we tried to vote now, at least in California, I think that it would not pass now. But it was maybe 8 years ago.
We lived in California when Prop 8 was going on too.
Yeah.
So I remember fighting for Prop 8. Like, I couldn't vote or anything, but I just remember them talking about it a lot.
It was all consuming.
It really was. Yeah.
For a while. So what? I mean, one of the questions that they asked was, why is the government interested in the marital union in the first place? And it does talk about, we'll be talking more about that later in the semester. But our whole, I don't know if any of you have read the whole the Supreme Court decision that was made. It's and the dissenting opinions and things like that. I read the whole thing for a class a couple semesters ago. It was super interesting. Super, like, as I was reading, I was like, I don't know why we're not for gay marriage. I mean, because they were so articulate. I'm like, why wouldn't we? Why is this such a bad thing? Of course we want everybody to feel included and loved. And I was like, what in the world? After I'm like, you can really be persuaded quickly if you do not if you do not believe in the doctrines of God.
Oh,
I mean, it's
You
easy
can
to be
see
persuaded.
why, I mean, all of us could be completely confused.
And if I didn't believe in God, you know, not that people that don't believe in God have no morals, but if you don't believe that this is doctrine that comes from God, I can see that it makes perfect sense that we'd all want to be equal and let people do what they want.
Well, and don't you think that chapter we read in the book was so fascinating when you start to break it down and realize if you do make it about someone's love life and being happy, then yeah, it makes perfect sense. Why can't everyone be happy? But I love how he pointed out that the government, their interest in it should be protecting children, protecting family units, because that protects society. So their interest shouldn't at all be who's sleeping with who. And in fact, I just grabbed this book because I love how it said, defining marriage as the union of a husband and wife does not violate the means living if the government rightly recognizes, protects, and promotes marriage as the ideal institution for child-bearing and child-rearing. Adults remain perfectly free to make choices about their religion. It is about families. It's about children. And when you break it down like that, it does make sense. It just goes to the government's best interest to promote the family with a mom and a dad.
I thought it was interesting too in that chapter how, because like, yeah, I read that question before I started the reading yesterday. I was like, whoa, government's role. I was like, I've never even thought about that. They're just there. But I love that chapter because, like you said, it was so just articulate in explaining what families are really for, and that the government is interested in protecting the children, but also perpetuating like humanity. Because if we don't have families, I mean, we're gonna die out. That's something I was talking to my husband about a couple weeks ago. So we have a friend who's studying here at the University of Minnesota, and she's in a PhD program for like family studies, and they have like just people with very alternative lifestyle views, but yet they're defending the family. And so in my mind, I was trying to figure out this disjunct here of, okay, you're you're transgender, or you're same-sex couple, but yet you're studying about families, and we're talking about how like somewhere there has to be some sort of understanding that you need to have a man and a woman as a family to have children and perpetuate that. And so like you're saying, Alicia, the government should be promoting pro-traditional family, because if their interest really is to protect children and to perpetuate humanity and people, like, you'd think that they'd realize that children need to come from somewhere, kind of thing.
Look, I think one of the problems too is that there are so many kids out there because people make the choice to have babies out of wedlock, or they, there's so many kids out there that could be adopted, that they kind of takes away the need for the man and the woman. Not, I mean, that makes it kind of sound bad, but
no, I know what you're saying.
But there are so many kids out there, and I struggle with this for another reason too. One of my best friends growing up is gay, and she's in a relationship with a woman, and they're raising this woman's boys together. My friend and her, they're not married, but and she's like, what good did that father do to these kids? They didn't have discipline. That he was abusive to them. He was abusive to her. I mean, she's like, they're way better off with me and my friend and my girlfriend. And I'm like, well, I see your point, but how, I can't deny that they are better off with them than they would have been with their dad. But again, we have to preach the ideal. Would they be better off still if that mother and that father were living the gospel? And I mean, yes, they would be, but it's hard. There's so many different factors, and It's hard. It's hard.
No, it is hard.
Really quick, were we supposed to read a chapter in our book, one of our books? Because I'm like looking and I'm like, I don't see where we're supposed to read a book in our book.
The Truth Over the Old book. Yeah. Oh yeah. I just got it. You're on mute.
No.
I am. Can you hear me? We're supposed to read this first chapter. I'm not loving
I loved it.
class is set up because I feel like there's different information where you look about what you're supposed to do. So if you don't read it correctly, you miss something.
Okay.
Like we're supposed to read the first chapter in here, and it's super interesting.
Okay.
It was really good.
But yeah, so read it when you can. It's
Because
only
I missed that somewhere to read that chapter.
It was like tucked away under some of the videos that we had to watch. So it was like a video, and then it was like, okay, here's some things to think about. Oh, by the way, read your chapter. Yeah.
Okay, I'll write that down and I'll read that chapter.
like
It's really good though. Super interesting.
any of every lesson. Like, this isn't exactly the reading, but it is kind of tucked in there. So
And I like just looked at the schedule for this week because it like has it all broken up and it was like read this and then the discussion board, read this and then the discussion board. It didn't like say anything about that. I was like, oh, okay, good. So,
yeah, it's under the heading "The Truth About Marriage," and it's like at the end. It's true. And if
the
you-
truth about it's under the truth about marriage.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm kind of confused about is, are we gonna have a discussion board tomorrow? Do at 11, discussing what we're just barely discussing right now, or because I don't have anything else to say.
Does it say that somewhere?
That's fair. I think the discussion board that's due tomorrow is just the link for this. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I think so too.
Okay.
I think so too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right after we
We
get
have
on
to be
this.
done with this. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go for it, Allison. Sorry.
We have to have had our discussion before Thursday of each week, Thursday night or whatever. So we have to post the link before Thursday.
Okay.
I think that's the only thing that we have for that discussion.
Okay.
Is that what everybody else understands?
I think so.
That's what I
That sounds
understood.
really good, and I like that. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
That sounds
So
great.
right after this, right after we're done with the broadcast, I'll just post a link right then, and I'll put everyone's names down, and then we'll.
And so, and I know we said this at the beginning, but just to clarify, only one person has to post that link. You don't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really quick, is anyone else in Rexburg?
I'm in Rexburg. I'm Stephanie.
Okay.
Me and Rachel in Rexburg, and DeLay is in Minneapolis. Allison, you're in Southern California, near LA.
Yeah, close to the temple, the LA temple, about 30 miles from the temple.
Okay. And I'm near Seattle, so I'm in Deep Harbor, Washington.
I was just wondering if anyone else is here.
Want to be a study buddy?
Yeah.
I have a niece that's in this class, but not in our group. But she's in my and she's in Idaho too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That would be so
I'm here, Rachel.
Yeah.
But are you in married housing or are you single?
Yeah, I'm in married housing.
Okay, I'm
But
single.
like, if you wanted to meet up, like that's no big deal.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, we could. Because I actually run into, I don't know, there's just so much reading and so much writing in this class that sometimes I feel like I'm not
so
really taking it in. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of reading. But
And I think I read like, I was kind of looking at the syllabus and everything. And that'd be kind of hard to do with someone who's somewhere else. So I was like, I just want to know if there's someone in Rexburg. So that's
yeah,
true.
I would love to do that in person if we could.
Yeah, definitely.
We're gonna hook up, ladies.
So yeah, okay, perfect.
Okay, so our time is up. Thank you for your discussion. Next week, is this a good time? Everybody's good with this time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, who would like to set up our what is it? I don't know.
The hangout.
Post a link.
I can try. In my last class, for some reason, we had a good meeting, and when I would personally set it up, I don't know if it's my computer or what, but I could see everyone, but no one could ever hear me. So then someone else would always have to end up setting up a new one. So I'm happy to try, but just know that I seem to have technical difficulties with that.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I haven't done it since they switched over to doing it all through YouTube. I haven't done one myself, but I could do it too. Hi, Alicia, and then if that doesn't work, then I will, or if you want to, we can practice some other time this week.
Well, you know, I'll try it, and if we can't make it work, someone can try and set one up.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty quick to get it set up. So.
Yeah. There's those links too on our, if you just look under the instructions for the Hangout on Air thing, it shows you how to set one up like with pictures, and it's super easy.
Oh. Yeah, like I could always, it's easy to set up. I just, for some reason, I have like a sound issue when I set it up. Maybe I won't this time.
We'll cross our fingers.
Okay, am I supposed to go over this and like do a 1 or 2 minute recap?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. I forgot. Yes. Thank you for keeping us on it.
Okay, so I jotted down the different things we talked about. We started the discussion if we didn't realize how far this ideology is with the family changing and kind of frustration and worries about our children and how we're going to keep them in this world with the true doctrine. Elaine mentioned it's really important to start teaching children at a younger and younger age because they're getting this in kindergarten and fifth grade. You know, they're getting these ideas. It's the family unit in fifth grade. Rachel brought up that you did a research on different types of families and how there really isn't much research with homosexual families, so it's a little unfair right now to just go forward with it because these kids are ending up being guinea pigs. Stephanie talked about that family that was it something you watched, something with the 3 parents and how they're making this work. And I like how you brought up, and I jotted it down, that it seems to be about feelings now and adult feelings and what adults want to feel or think. That's what we go with in this society now. And so it kind of leaves children out to dry. Rachel then brought up the why behind these principles and why it's so important to know why this doctrine exists, why it's God-given. I talked about we're not against people, we're for marriage, for traditional marriage, that it's God-given. Allison then talked about why we study this at the beginning, and Stephanie and Shelley talked about having the truth first fixed in our mind, so we have something to measure other ideas by. And then we talked about, Allison asked about why the government's interested, why they should be interested, and how with the government, if they would promote traditional families, it would protect children and it would bolster society in general. It's in their best interest to protect traditional families. Anything else?
Perfect. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, sounds like we're good then. Unless somebody else sees something, you know, that we missed, I think we're good as far as our group until Thursday. Next Wednesday. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ladies.
Good.
It's nice to
Yep.
meet you all.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Good luck.
Right.
Week.
Yep.
Good luck.
Good luck, everyone.
Carry on.
All right.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.